for joining us on this panel today. We are here, of course, to talk about creating future leaders in the arts. Unusual time to have a panel discussion. Everyone's either sleepy after having a heavy lunch or hungry. But I promise today's session is going to be great because we have some of the finest minds in the fields of theatre, culture, arts and music. Before we begin, I just wanted to kind of, share some statistics to give us some perspective on why we're here today. In 2022, a UNESCO report on the creative economy states that the arts and the creative economy contributes about 3.1% of the GDP and 6.2% in terms of employment. Now, while these numbers appear very small, they are actually staggering. And our art orchestrators today will talk about the potential and the scope in India. So thank you so much, Brinda, Asad, Joseph and Quasar for joining us. Brinda, I'll start with you. Ladies first as always. You've been part and associated with Ghoda Arts Festival for nearly 24 years now. Yeah? 25, we complete to, Ghoda completes 25 in the coming year. Congratulations on that. Brinda, can you take us back to the time when the city did not have an arts festival? What was it like? And how has the public engagement changed in these last 25 odd years?
So honestly, the city still does not have an arts festival like the Ghoda Arts Festival. Or for that matter, I don't think the country has an arts festival at all like it. We kind of cover everything, dance, music, theatre. But yes, we did start very, very small, and though I wasn't there when it started, I was a kind of volunteer at that time. I'm still a volunteer, as I say. And it was really a small festival. It was just something that was happening on the street, and it happened to be in the arts district where there were a lot of art galleries, and in any case, those were just listed. On the weekend, there was something happening. It was like 2 weeks long, that festival. And then we reduced it to 9 days. A lot of people say, why don't you do something throughout the year? Because there's nothing else like it. But the fact is that it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of passion. It takes a lot of people who come and volunteer, and they want to help and do something for the city. So, like I said, there's nothing like it even now.
I thought I'll ask you, I'll come back to Brinda later. You've created in the last 15 years of being part of Avid and running Avid actually, more than 1,600 plus programs. What are the challenges of creating events, public programs for an audience, for an Indian audience?
Thank you for that question, Jane. So just to clarify, 15 years Avid has been around. I moved back to India in 2010. I dabbled around I kind of fell into the arts. But around 2011, I took over Avid to grow it. Yes, we have done 1,600 programs. But rather than look at the challenges, I think one thing we need to, you quoted some very interesting stats. I mean, India being the most populous nation in the world, and 50% of our population being under the age of 25. And there are some other stats floating around that, 78% of employers, the skill that they're looking for is creativity. I think there's that opportunity out there. Yes, challenges are there. There's financial challenges, which applies to any industry. Yes, in the arts, it's a little more. Education, which again applies to every industry. But I think there are flip side. There are arts orchestrators who are missing, except for this. And there is a lot of very smart people there. But there's also, formalized programs. I think that one of the challenges I face is I don't come from an arts background. I can't come from advertising in New York. And for me to work in the arts, I'm not a curator, I have no degrees in it, I have a marketing degree, is to be taken seriously in the arts. And I had friends like Brinda, others who helped me when I was starting out, and slowly build an ecosystem. So I think, it is difficult to get an audience, to fill a room, but I think there are ways around it. You just have to be very persistent.
Joseph, this one's for you. Furtados has been, around for 160 odd years now in Dhobitala. For all of those who've gone and wanted to buy their music instruments, Furtados is the place. in 2011, you started an education arm of Furtados, which was called the Furtados School of Music. Since then, you'll have taught about 3 lakh students, 80,000 per week. I'm interested in knowing what led a music company to branch out and to think about music education seriously.
I think that's a really nice question, Jane, because what we started seeing, so we've been around for donkey's years. You know, my dad bought over the businesses in 1953, and we went through very lean times because we weren't allowed to import any musical instruments since 1965. It was only with Manmohan Singh's opening up of the economies in the early 1990s that we were able to start at nearly 350% duty levels. And obviously now it's so basically nearly 2 generations lost out on music education. In the early days, you used to have orchestra bands and all sorts of music education in schools, which you didn't have for a long period of time because there was such a dearth of musical instruments. So when we started, we were the first people to start importing musical instruments, and where we used to distribute, and we still distribute a number of very, very big brands in India. And we have about 19 stores all across the country right now. But we started seeing that the market wasn't really growing for our products. Not only was that, it was more and more people were not getting exposed to music because obviously there weren't enough teachers. And that is why we started Furtados School of Music to bring about formal education, because there were a lot of teachers, who did it on an ad hoc, one-on-one basis. But there was no organized formal education system. And right now we have over 350 schools that we actually teach music in. We take over their full curriculum, and that's just early days because my wife and her co-founder started Furtados School of Music in 2011. They were also just bankers and they were not really musicians. And I think you need that sometimes because music is such a passionate thing that you don't see the way you can grow it. But they've really taken it to a different level, and so obviously our other businesses have also grown accordingly because of that.
Great. Quasar, I had a question on theatre, but because I'm partial to literature, I'll start with that first. Quasar is one of the people who helped start our literature life, one of my favorite festivals in the city. When Tata Lit Life began, Tata Literature Life, it really changed the literature landscape. Ever since then, we've seen so many book clubs come out, and I'm personally covering books for the newspaper when I work. I know how literature has transformed in Mumbai, and we also have amazing new authors emerging out of the city every single day. For you to run a festival now, every single part of the country has a literary festival popping up, every year actually. How does Tata Literature Life stay relevant? How do you, as part of this Literature Life team, make sure that the festival seems as relevant as it was when it began?
So, actually on the literary aspect, being relevant is actually quite easy because people are writing books about the now. People are writing stuff about the now. This is why there are so many young writers that are coming out. So clearly there is a finger on the pulse. What's lovely about a literature festival is someone has written a book about it, which means it's considered. Someone has spent time researching, someone has spent time putting something together. And really we are just the boosters of that. And I think all of us sitting here, at one level are just boosters. We like what we see and we want other people to share it with, and that's why we have platforms that we do that. And I think that's kind of what a life in the arts is all about. And with Literature Life, we actually are quite fortunate because there are so many new books. When we started out, it wasn't that case. I mean, the festival is now in its 15th year. This will be our 15th year of the festival. The organization is a little longer. And the kind of stuff we're doing, where we're going into colleges, schools, I mean, the burst of poetry, nobody would have expected that. I think all of us remember a time when NCPA used to run something called the Chauraha program, which was a poetry thing with 8 people, and today, the amount of poets and burgeoning poets and the poetry events that happen, we take that to schools and colleges, and like 150 people are turning up at 7 o'clock in the morning to listen to poets. and the faculty are turning to us going, what's going on? So this is an amazing thing, and I think there are more arts participants. It's no longer just the organizations. There are many more arts participants in it, and that is then reflecting in the number of people who are playing music, the people who are actually attending the Ghoda Arts Fest. I mean, there's been this mad surge that has happened, and even the fact that, I mean, I remember Asad, when we started out with the workshops and stuff, there were, we had to put a gun to people's head to get them in. And now these guys are doing an insane amount of these things. Like, I don't get his regular mails because there are so many others that have come about this workshop and that workshop. So I think the arts are now very much part of our world, particularly with regards to literature and the writing. There are so many more writers, so many more people have things to say. Older texts no longer have the same relevance in this new digital age, because all of a sudden Wuthering Heights doesn't work, because why did he walk across the moor, man? He could have sent an SMS, or he could have done a WhatsApp. Why did he walk across all of that? So there's a different relevance that's happening, and even your book and the work that you're writing about is now reflecting that change in being more immediate for what people are responding to.
Thank you, Quasar. I have a couple of questions now which are relevant to the audience, because I think it will help those who are sitting here. And this is for anyone and everyone who wants to answer. I have a question on the alternative modes of education. We have a lot of art residencies coming up, writing residencies. Do you think what we have in India is enough? Do we need more international collaborations to help students like these who are interested in the fields of arts?
Can I go?
Yeah, sure.
See, I think it is from an Avid perspective. Our tagline is learning never stops. And I believe, at this point in time, forget the students, in life in general, gone is the time when you did your college, you did a postgrad, and that was it. Everyone here is lifelong learners. You keep learning something new each day. As far as formats of learning, one size doesn't fit all. Residencies are wonderful, online collaborations are wonderful. See what happened in lockdown. Zoom wasn't invented for lockdown, collaboration wasn't there, but see the astronomical body of work that we all did as far as education goes, as far as art cultural programming goes. So there is enough. Whether internationally, you can see how I walked around this place, there are so many international collaborations, and the world is not like East and West anymore, the world is really flat. So there are people from all walks of life, all countries, everything is intermingling, and technology is the fundamental enabler of this new way of learning and new way of living, essentially. So I feel, it will change, and now with the proliferation of AI, this is changing even more astronomically. So these young kids are so very lucky, they've got so much they can choose from.
Anyone who wants to take on that?
I don't think it's enough. I don't think what's happening right now is enough. I think there is great scope. The wonderful thing about it is we learn about other cultures. The arts are about human beings. They're about people. They're about being in a room with each other and understanding and learning empathy in that way. And I don't think we have enough. Stuff has started happening. There's a lot more. Asad's absolutely right. We're in a much better place than we were even 10 years ago with regards to collaborations and connections. But I think we do need more of that. And I think all of us sitting here, so far, it's all been through absolute private heatness, right? Stubbornness of getting something going, right? All of us. And it all started very small, and now these projects have now grown into incredible things. And I think that there needs to be more of that. There needs to be more connection, perhaps with councils and municipalities and governments, to make it a little easier that people can access the arts, people can connect, make more of these collaborations, and not just internationally. It could be nationally, it could be rural, urban, because when we bring people together, that's how we understand each other, and that's very, very important at a time like this.
Yes?
So I think it's a very good point that Quasar made about nationally, and because more and more as we've been taking out Furtados School of Music around the country and to different areas, we've been seeing the greatest demand in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Because a lot of people out there are more aspirational, they want to really keep what's happening in the bigger cities and they don't have those opportunities. So it's always about, trying to gain that sort of knowledge, gain that sort of, which they're not exposed to in those places. So the hunger is definitely much more in the smaller towns and cities than it is in the bigger, the bigger cities and metros, etc. And I do think that we lack a lot of, expertise, a lot of knowledge, especially in the education space, largely because, people are still becoming more modern in their thinking, and we need a lot of more collaboration with international, maybe not international, but maybe a lot of new thinking that needs to come in, especially for kids nowadays. Attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, and we need to really, figure out ways by which we get them to be more engaged in their learning and enjoy their learning, rather than look at it as a chore.
Here I just want to, because you made a point here, with the Furtados School of Music, and when you talk about music has always been seen, or in some aspects seen as a side hobby, something you perform on the side and it's just fun to be a musician. But are we creating room for people to take their music seriously, to go full time in it? Do you see that happening, while you are training these many number of students? Is that flow happening for, providing them enough employment opportunities so that they can take this up full time?
Absolutely, we're seeing more and more opportunities for young adults in the music space and otherwise. So it's not only about being a musician, being in a band or performing on stage, but it's also in education, in learning. There's so much of music production that's happening. There's so many different varied fields. There's music business, and where we see also ourselves in Furtados School of Music and in teaching so many people music is not that all of them are going to, and even take music up as a profession in the future, but all these people will become the audience of tomorrow, and that's what you require for musicians and for performer artists, theatre personalities, etc. You need people to come out there and actually be the audience so that they themselves can continue doing what they can and making it meaningful for them as a as a livelihood. That's very, very important.
So I come from the field of fine arts, and I don't find that there are any opportunities for young people to learn, say, drawing, painting, even a class. People ask me, can you suggest a teacher, sort of private tutor even? And I really can't find anybody for them. And I think that's a pity, because the one college that we have is JJ School of Art in Mumbai, for example. I mean, it's really not what it used to be. I'm from JJ. I loved it. It was wonderful. But recently, when I had gone there for some jury, I found that the people who were winning prizes, we were supposed to choose. We just couldn't choose. It was so bad. So that's a pity. That's one. Two is that when you ask them any question, they have no exposure to anything. That's the problem. I think colleges don't expose the students to anything outside. They don't send them to a museum. They don't send them to a field trip. They don't. I think it's just just something that you come to college and you learn. I also learned by myself. Those days also it wasn't that easy, but at least there was a sort of keenness to learn, from the students. But now I find it's not there.
Sorry, I was just going to pick up on what you were saying. One of the things, the ways to look at the arts is to actually take lessons from sport. Right? Not every kid on the Maidan is going to play the IPL. Right? Not every kid who picks up a guitar or whatever is going to become a musician and have a career in it. Sometimes they're doing it because it's fun, and that's absolutely fine. But what that also builds is then a fan base for the art. It builds a fan base for what you're doing. So the 30,000 people who are who were in Wankhede last night, none of them are cricketers. right? Or none of them are are top level cricketers or even aspiring to be. Most of them are just either playing socially or having fun with it. But they get to come together and they watch something and they cheer together. And that's the same thing that we do for music and art and any kind of thing. We come together and we watch something and we cheer it on and we get enjoyment out of it. So one of the ways to look at it, but particularly music, obviously with acting and theatre and all of that, and now even with writing, where suddenly new stories are almost currency. But all those are in, let's say, the commercial arts, right? You're looking at your OTT, your television, your advertising, your online kind of stuff. But I mean, everyone here has made 1 4-second or 8-second video. Am I right? Like for Instagram or something. That means you're a practicing artist, right? You put yourself out there, you've done something. So there are so many more arts participants. Not all of us are going to become influencers or anything like that. But I think that's a way to take a lesson.
Talk about yourself, Quasar. We all are. But your question was about alternate forms of education, residency specifically, and international collaboration. So to that, what Anthony said, Joseph said, was about the programs they do for tier 2, tier 3 cities. But I know many people, including my, at that point, 7-year-old daughter in lockdown, signed up for Furtados School of Music to learn to play the guitar online. And so what technology is doing is putting you in those, even online art residencies we've done, which is amazing. Obviously, there's nothing like being in a physical classroom and exchanging and smelling people in person. And it's the creative exchange. Creative people thrive on each other. You can't create in isolation. You need human beings are social beings, essentially.
This brings me to another favorite topic of mine, which is conservation, and Brinda has been, neck deep in it. She is the chairperson of the Ghoda Association that looks after the restoration of many of the structures in the precinct, and Ghoda looks beautiful, far beautiful than it was 10 years ago. It's always been a beautiful place. Brinda, people are now taking greater interest in conservation, heritage in the city. At the same time, our city is transforming rapidly. Conservation is coming to be a very interesting space. Many people are aspiring to be architects in that particular field. Do you think, what do you think is the role of arts in this? How does arts fit into city building?
So what a lot of people don't know is the main reason why the Ghoda Arts Festival was started was because the money that would be left over from the sponsorship would contribute towards the conservation of the area. No one used to look at any of the buildings until a few years ago, as you said. And it used to be a deep, dark, dingy place. But once the festival started and we started raising money, of course, it was very hard because funding is always a very tough part of the festival. And last year also we just came out of COVID and it was very difficult to kind of gather funds. This year we've done better, I must say. And but it is our mandate that we put aside a certain amount just to conserve some of the buildings in the area and make them spruce up the area, make it look as good as it is. Also, what has happened is over the years that a lot of people have noticed that buildings do need conservation because it's kind of a way to point it out that this is what we've spent the money on. So they also put in money. And the government is also paying a lot of attention this year to that, so which is a great thing. Government is never supporting us. Every year we would also think that the next year we will not be able to do this festival because we will not have the money. But anyway, we've been now around for 25 years. So right from the first year we thought, next year we are not going to be able to do this festival.
Wow, that's interesting music in the background. Quasar, this question is to you, and this is regarding theatre. You worked on all kinds of spaces, intimate, proscenium, black box. India is a space where theatre has always existed, right? To folk, street theatre. Are we doing enough to bring theatre to the people, especially the marginalized communities?
So theatre is one of those weird things that's caught between two stools, right? Part of it is you need people, you need bums on seats to watch it, so it has some commercial consideration, and on the other hand, it's also an art, which is often, artists trying to create, and then people take notice when they will. So it's always been caught between these two kinds of things. The one thing that the theatre has lacked over here compared to anywhere else in the world is the lack of overall infrastructure, right? So for example, if you look back in the 1950s and you look at where currently all the Marathi theatres are, they're all big proscenium theatres along the railway line, right? So they were built so that people could get to them easily. In the UK, they call it the theatre pound, right? So when they were building the railway system, the underground railway system, they were originally going to have all the stations concentrated around Bank and St. Paul's Cathedral. And one guy said, why are we making it easier for people to go to work? We should make it easier for them to go to entertainment. And that's why the center, so your Piccadilly line, your Northern line, all of that actually goes through the West End. So that's the center of the railway line. And because of that, there are 2.5 lakh people that watch a play in those 23 theatres every week. Now, if you're bringing 2.5 lakh people to that district, automatically restaurants come up, bars come up, hotels come up, and that whole area, of London, what is now called Theatreland, is actually benefiting off the fact that the theatre is bringing people to it. So there is a huge economic incentive as well. Unfortunately, our framers, our policy makers aren't seeing that value. They're not looking at it. So even, for example, something like, the ICCR, which says that they will cover venue and equipment and all, will not pay an artist fee, and you're not allowed to charge tickets. So that puts the artist at the absolute bottom end of this cost pyramid, which makes no sense. And how will the artist survive? So there is this, it is patronage, it's a hobby kind of hangover that at least currently the policy still has. And that has to change. And the moment that changes, automatically we will make it more accessible. Right now, there is also the other side of the coin, right? Because the theatre is playing to 300, 400, 800 people at a time and not 1 million people like cinema is, it's actually a great place to test anything. So there are more accessibility things that are happening in the theatre. There are more representation of queer stories or marginalized stories that happen in the theatre because it's a test balloon. It works for 300 people. I had a conversation once with a very famous director called Vijay Kinkre, and I went and saw a play of his, and it was a commercial play, and I actually didn't like it. And I called him up and I was like, I have great respect for you, but what is this? And he said, you cannot expect experimental sensibilities in a commercial work. He said the job of the experimental theatre, because it's catching 200, 300, 400 small, is to push the level of commercial theatre high. But commercial considerations will always be commercial considerations. Right? It's why the commercial films will always have an item number, because that is a commercial. What do people want? Okay, let's give them that. While the artistic side of it is much more different. So we really look at smaller kind of initiatives, smaller kind of things. So in that way, the theatre is doing an incredible job in trying to reach out. It's not enough. It does need the help. It does need the support. For example, different abilities are not represented on our stages yet. That should be something. I'm right now working with the Serendipity Arts Festival, and we're trying to see how audio description can be developed for performances. How can we bring audiences that otherwise will not access this material into that and make it easier for them? So these are some of the things we're looking at.
Got it. I have one more question for Asad, and then we can throw it to the audience, just 2 questions. Does that work? We'll see. Yeah? Okay, one more question. Asad, this is for you, and this is because you're the curator of Royal Opera House. Repurposing the Royal Opera House, which is an architectural heritage, as a performance venue is no mean feat. I wanted to know what went into and what goes into curating events for a venue like ROHM.
The Opera House was closed for 25 years. It was reopened in 2016. So the legacy, though it was there, was kind of also forgotten by a lot of people. In fact, if you took a cab in 2016 and said, take me to the Opera House, they'd ask you where. This is the Opera House Theatre, but they didn't know where it was. But that said, bringing built heritage to life is how I look at it, right? A beautiful building, restored, looks very luxurious, royal, intimidating to the common man. But what I decided to do when I was hired as a curator a few months before, is to make it accessible and the kind of programming you put in. So there are two sides. It's who you do it for and who you work with. So for example, our opening night, I made sure the whole arts and culture ecosystem across genres, all these three were invited because I wanted, and they were there, I wanted them to be part of this journey and be part of this platform that is there for the city. Because there's no point me having a theatre if Quasar doesn't do a show there tomorrow. Or Anthony's equipment is not at the Opera House. So you bring in the ecosystem and you create programming that's diverse because one size doesn't fit all. So we've experimented with Marathi programming, Gujarati, Hindi, obviously primarily we do English, across genres, across age groups. And how you say, I'm a marketing guy, I know how to market, so I'm just going to keep it short. It's been a challenge, but it's been extremely fun and fulfilling.
Great. Thank you so much, Brinda, Asad, Joseph, Quasar. It's been amazing, and thank you, panel. There's a question. Can you take one question for the audience? Yeah?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Bunny Pradeep, and my question is to Brinda ma'am. Ma'am, I have been visiting Ghoda festival since many years from now. I think I started when I was in my first year, but recently when there was COVID for I think 2.5 years or 3 years, maybe we didn't do that festival. But one thing that I and my friends noticed previous year and this year as well, that there was a similarity in the concept of the theme, basically recycling and producing the art from that. My question is to you that will that theme continue forever, or do we have multiple theme suggestions, or how does it work for every time when you organize this festival?
It's not a theme actually. It's something we've been doing all along. We always have been focusing on sustainability and all of that. In fact, this year I think the focus was less on that, and now it is more on other things also. I think this year a lot of people talked about inclusivity and diversity and things like that. So we kind of concentrated a lot on that. But yes, sustainability and the environment, all of that has always been important at the festival.
Just one more question adding to it. Have the jury ever thought about it that maybe we could bring in a theme based on the festival or something? Because many of the festivals which are conducted in India and abroad as well, they have different themes going on every year.
We have a theme every year. We have a different theme every year. This year it was Udan. I've forgotten already. So I'm on to the next theme. So.
Quasar has something.
Sorry, just to respond to yours. Things like sustainability, diversity, these are not themes.
Yeah,
These are practices that we must put in, and when you say will they be there forever, yes, they should be. Right? Recycling, we should definitely reduce the amount of plastic we use.
Yeah.
We should definitely look at the amount of water we do. So I think that what it is important, when I think the first year when they came up with it, I think there was this big installation, and it kind of clicked everyone's brain. They went, hey man, we can everything is art, and this is reusing stuff that otherwise gets thrown away.
One year we had a theme, Hara Ghoda, actually. It was called Hara Ghoda, which was about environment and all of that. But yeah, as he says, it's a practice which should be there for it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.